The past perfect continuous tense is similar to the past perfect tense except that the activity is continuous. In the past perfect continuous tense, something happens in the past. This is some sort of activity that's continuous and it starts in the past and remains continuous in the past. And at some point it stops. So it starts in the past and it remains continuous in the past, and at some point in the past it stops. For example, over here. And then you have the present tense or the present time. So you talk about something that finished in the past and it's a continuous activity that remained continuous in the past. The action of the main verb must be continuous to use this verb tense. For example, a son of mine had been living in this country for over 15 years before he got promoted. So this example is a very good example of past perfect continuous tense. This part shows the past perfect continuous tense. So he was living in the past. A son of mine had been living in this country for over 15 years. He was living in that country for 15 years. So then came 15 years over here, this point. So here is the past perfect continuous tense in the singular and plural. Singular. I had been, and then the main verb with ing ending. I had been, and then the main verb over here, main verb, is followed with an ing ending, and this main verb is going to be the base form, or you can say a simple form. So you had been, and then living or going or seeing or looking, whatever you write. So this is the main verb in simple form. You had been going, he had been going, she had been going, it had been going. And for the plural, we have got we, that is combination of I and you. We had been going, main verb with ing ending. You, that is the past form, that is the plural form of singular you. You had been going, and then they, the plural form of he, she, it, they had been going. So this is main verb that is in simple form. So in all these examples, the base form, if we take go, it is in simple form. So you don't have to remember that past participle. The past participle is here, been. In all these examples, we have not to remember that past participle, especially the irregular form of past participle. So in this case, in past perfect continuous, it is been. This is helping verb had. in all these examples, helping verb had, and in plural form it remains the same. So in all the cases, whatever the pronoun is, the helping verb remains had. So we always use the same helping verb. Helping verb had followed by past participle been, and then main verb in the simple form with an ing ending. This is the structure. Remember one thing, that the main verb here is in simple form. Main verb is always in simple form, but it has an ing ending. So you can use verb like go, do, see, eat, cook, whatever you write. Almost any verb will fit in all these simple forms. But we cannot use the verb be over here. We cannot use the verb be as a simple form in past perfect continuous tense. Let's take few examples in order to further consolidate the concept. She had been teaching there for 10 years before she was fired. So here is when the person was fired. What is that point? This point on the timeline, the action starts over here. So she had been teaching for 10 years, means she had been teaching. The action starts in the past over here. It remains continuous in the form of teaching for 10 years. And then this is the point when she was or she got fired. This is the point. And then this is the time before that she had been teaching. So this particular time from here to here, the action remained continuous. And then at this time, he got fired, or he was fired. And after that, we enter into present tense. So you could also use the past perfect tense and just say she had taught there for 10 years before she was fired. We can also use this structure as well. One good thing about the past perfect continuous tense is that you don't have to remember what the past participle is, especially for the irregular verbs. You don't need to remember the past participle for the main verb, especially for irregular forms when using the past perfect continuous tense. So this is a very simple, because in all these examples, been is the past participle. Let's take this example, and is missing. When she came to the door, I could tell she had been crying. Here is the past continuous tense, or here is the past perfect continuous tense, because she continuously did this activity in the past from here to this point in the past. Had been crying. This had and been and then crying, this is actually past perfect continuous tense. This one, had been crying, and this started in the past, and the person was crying, and then stopped crying. At this point, that person stopped. This is the point, in the past when she stopped crying and then came to the door. When she came to the door, after this activity of crying, then she came to the door and then answered the door, but at this point she was no longer crying. So this is a good way to talk about the activity that takes place in the past and it's continuous, but then it stops. She stopped crying before she came to the door, but it was clear that she had been crying. When she came to the door, I could tell she had been crying. So after this, then we know that after this particular time, when she stopped crying, we enter in the present, means she came to the door. And you are talking about the situation now. Before help arrived, the survivors of the earthquake had been praying for a miracle. So something really bad happens, like an earthquake. Something very bad happens, just like some natural catastrophe, an earthquake, and people are trapped. This is the situation, or they are in need of help and they are praying, and then help arrives, and then that brings us to present. And we talked about this situation in the past, means on the timeline something bad happens over here that starts happening, and then that earthquake happens, and that bad thing is causing some a problem. The people gets trapped, and then they starts praying, and they were praying in the past, and then help arrives over here, this point in the past, and then that brings us to present tense or present situation. And we talked about the situation in the past, mean in the past had been praying, means it starts in the past and it ends in the past, but during this it remains continuous. Praying, simple form followed by ing, had been praying. And this is the example exactly fits, that had been praying. Before help arrived means after praying, at this point the help arrived. So they had been praying, and after that help arrives. So before help arrived, the survivors of the earthquake had been praying for a miracle. So this is the point in the past when they started praying till this point when the help arrives. This is the point, and they gets rescued by the rescue teams, and then we enter in the present tense. It doesn't matter what the subject is, you're always, this is the subject, it doesn't matter what the subject is, you're always going to use had been. And then here is the main verb praying, pray with an ing ending, and this pray is in simple form of the verb. So this could be singular, survivor's subject. This could be singular or plural, but had been remains the same. They had been taking extra precautions to avoid the flu virus, but they got it anyway. So we see here on timeline, this is the timeline, the verb takes over here, this is the verb takes had been. So had been, and then the present form of the verb take with an ing ending, had been taking, and this is continuous. So it starts, they had been taking extra precautions. So this is the time when they started taking this extra precautionary measures to avoid the flu virus. So they started taking these precautions, taking, and this is the point when they got the flu anyway. Then something happens means at this point something happens means they assimilate the virus, and it's that would be like this, they got the flu, and then we enter in the present tense. When had and not are used together in the form of a contraction, it sounds like hadn't. I went to the doctor because I hadn't been feeling well. So over here, this is the simple form. I went to the doctor because I hadn't been feeling well. Here is the past perfect continuous tense, hadn't been feeling, and this is the situation. This is the situation, feeling means the action starts over here in the time on the timeline, and I hadn't been feeling well. Then at this point in the past, I went to the doctor. So at this point, this happens means I went to the doctor. Here, this happened. This situation of feeling, hadn't been feeling well, that continues or that remains continuous. It starts from here and it remained till this time, and then it stopped after this happened. What happened? I went to the doctor. I went to the doctor. This happened after this feeling bad or feeling unwell. And now at this point everything is okay.